Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get started here in just a second. All right. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining us today. My name is Tara Donadio. I am the Assistant Director of Sustainability here at the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. And welcome to today's local government workshop webinar, Tales of the Power of Reuse, Keeping Buildings, Furniture, Textiles, and Other Stuff Out of Landfills. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see everything a bit better. For those of you who don't know us, CDRPC is a regional planning and resource center. We serve Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties. We foster intergovernmental cooperation, communicating, collaborating, and facilitating regional initiatives. We work with partners to help them address regional problems. We established this webinar series to help planners sharpen their skills and as a vehicle for Planning and Zoning Board appeals members to obtain credit hours. Town, village, and city zoning board of appeals and planning board members, as well as county planning board members, must receive 4 hours of training annually. Municipalities have a wide latitude in defining what training is acceptable for credit. After each webinar in the series, each attendee that registered with an email address will receive an email confirming attendance. This email may be submitted to your municipality for consideration of credit. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Hodgson Rush, who generous support allowed us to offer these trainings free of charge. So thank you so much. And thank you to our session presenters for sharing their expertise with you all. In addition, for practicing AICP certified planners, this session has been approved for 1 hour of CM credit. Just a few more housekeeping notes. Our attendees join with audio and video off for security purposes. This doesn't mean you're not able to ask questions. Just please do them in the Q&A feature or ask questions button at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to be moderating and interjecting from time to time with questions, but most of the questions we'll just take at the end, unless it's something timely. These presentations are going to be archived as a PDF. It's being recorded. The links to these materials will be on our website. And now just a bit about today's topic, Tales of the Power of Reuse, Keeping Buildings, Furniture, Textiles, and Other Stuff Out of Our Landfills. Construction and demolition debris, CDD, is the largest waste stream in the U.S. At more than 600 million tons. It's twice the amount of everyday garbage we throw away. The environmental, economic, and cultural benefits of deconstruction and building material reuse rather than demolition and creation of vast amounts of landfill waste are enormous. CROWD, Circular Reuse Zero Waste Development, a collaborative network in New York State, formed 2 years ago to create a circular building economy. 2 of CROWD's funding partners will share state and local efforts to promote sustainable treatment of our building and infrastructure, and how the power of reuse generally can create meaningful jobs while keeping materials out of landfills. So for our speakers, we have Gretchen Worth, who's the project director of the Susan Christopherson Center for Community Planning, which supports New York State communities to achieve a more equitable, climate resilient built environment. And we also have Diane Cohen, executive director of the Finger Lakes Reuse, and she's been working in used material management since 2001. Over the years, she and Finger Lakes Reuse have received numerous state and national awards for championing environmental sustainability. So thank you so much to both of them. And I'm going to turn it over now to Gretchen, who's going to start us off.
Thank you so much, Tara. And thanks to everyone for joining today. I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. So I'm just going to skip right through this because you heard it all from Tara. I'm with the Christopherson Center. We're based in Ithaca. We work statewide for an equitable, climate resilient built environment here in the state. And so I'm here to talk to you about the work that we are doing through CROWD, which stands for Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development. And as Tara mentioned, CROWD formed about 2.5 years ago, bringing together a lot of different people from a lot of different areas around the idea of how we in New York State can create a sustainable built environment. Diane Cohen, who you'll hear from after this, is one of the founding partners of CROWD through Finger Lakes Reuse, along with the Christopherson Center and a number of others. To us, a sustainable built environment means creating a circular building and construction economy. And so there are a lot of different pieces in that. That includes maintaining and repairing our existing buildings and infrastructure. It means adaptive reuse of our buildings and infrastructure, but it also means when something has to come down, rather than demolishing it and sending it all to the landfill, that we're deconstructing it and giving those materials a chance to be reused by the local communities. So at the core of what we're doing is really trying to raise awareness, resources around, support for this enormous stream of building and construction materials that currently go to the landfill. So here in New York State, we're considered a climate leader. And indeed, we have banned plastic bags at supermarkets, and that BYO bag mentality took hold pretty quickly. And so we all bring our own bags now to the supermarket. We're becoming increasingly aware of other dangers of single-use plastic, since I'm sure that all of you now have a flask and you wouldn't be caught dead buying bottled water off a supermarket shelf. In the past few years, there's been a lot of resources in New York State pointed toward food waste, although I hate to say the word waste. And so both at an individual household level, there have been programs and resources and advocacy around encouraging composting, but also at an industrial level. So how can we take the byproducts of our craft brewing industry, of our dairy industry, and reimagine those to their highest and best use, rather than creating just feedstock for animals? We would like to see the same effort, time, attention, support, resources for what is an enormous stream of materials that currently go to our landfills and incinerators. So Tara mentioned this statistic, but it bears repeating always. In the US, every year, we generate 600 million tons of what's called construction and demolition debris, or CDD. So as you can see from the chart on the right, that's twice the amount of the next largest waste stream, which is our everyday garbage, municipal solid waste, what we throw away as individuals, consumers. In New York State, we currently send to our landfills, we create 19 million tons of CDD, although many working in this area think that that may be an underestimation. And so as a result of this huge, huge stream of materials, it's the largest single component of our landfills. Most of the CDD is coming from demolition rather than new construction. And it's estimated that if we were to deconstruct our buildings, upwards of 80% of that material could be reused. A lot of this is asphalt and concrete. There are also significant tonnages of wood, of brick, of other reusable building materials, as well as architectural salvage. And at this moment, there is no local government in New York State that's adopted a deconstruction ordinance, or even really any requirement in terms of building material diversion. So to just step back for a second about our built environment generally, our built environment generates globally 40% of carbon emissions. And so of that 40%, about 2/3 come as operational carbon. So what it takes to heat our buildings, cool our buildings, keep the lights on in our buildings. But 1/3 of that 40% is known as embodied carbon. And so those are the emissions produced before the building even gets built. So it's the extraction of the material, the transportation of that raw material to be manufactured into usable material, transporting that to the building site, building the building. So before the ribbon cutting and the grand opening of even the most sustainable net zero, top of the line building imaginable, there's still significant embodied carbon in that building, which is why you've probably heard the mantra that is beloved by preservationists and certain architects, which is that the greenest building is the one that's already built. So there are benefits, obviously, to any circular economy. And there are some specific ones around a circular construction economy that I wanted to pull out. So environmentally, obviously, by reusing building materials, putting them back into our local markets, we're reducing waste to landfills, which is always a good thing. particularly right now in New York State, when there are landfills that are coming to the end of their life and incinerators, but also wanting to extend those landfills longer. So reducing what we're sending to them. There's the embodied carbon, which I just mentioned in terms of our existing buildings. Also, no matter how safe, the safest demolition, it is not as safe as deconstruction. So even the safest demolition is still sending toxins that travel far into our air, into our soil, into our water. And so there's a public health and safety issue around demolition as well. Socially and culturally, the case has been made that as we get better at maintaining our buildings and infrastructure, repairing our buildings and infrastructure, adaptively reusing them, taking them apart, putting them back together again, just those processes and practices can help improve future design and manufacturing processes, products, practices, and make them more sustainable. There are times when a site has to come down for a variety of reasons. And so while we may lose the history behind that site, by retaining those materials, we're able to honor the history and craftsmanship that went into it originally. By continuing to maintain, repair, deconstruct our buildings, we're developing trade skills that are being lost generationally. And this is a very visible process. And so by doing so, we think that it can encourage sustainable treatment of our neighborhoods by virtue of showing how it can be done. Economically, the types of jobs related to a circular construction economy are green jobs. They're local jobs. They tend to stay local and benefit the local economy. If any of you are DIYers or involved in the building trades yourself, you know that particularly during COVID, the supply of building materials was at an all-time low and the price was at an all-time high. Yet every day we are throwing away, never to be used again, materials like old growth wood, like you see up in the upper corner of the picture, like 1918, that don't exist on the open market anymore. We're throwing those away when in fact they could augment our existing material supply and strengthen vulnerable supply chains, which are predicted to become increasingly vulnerable over time. So if deconstruction is so great, why aren't we doing it? In New York State, there are currently, at this moment, a number of challenges. In New York State, at this moment, it certainly costs more and it takes longer to deconstruct a building rather than demolish it. There's also a lack of specific material outlets where building materials can go in order to be sorted, stored, processed, and then wholesale and retailed back into the community. And as Diane will tell you, although we do have reuse centers across the state, they are full up with everything else. So we really lack specifically designated places to bring these materials. We also lack policy, as I mentioned, in New York State, and we lack a skilled workforce who's able to deconstruct a building in a timely, proper manner. But I say in New York State right now, because there are many municipalities across the US and internationally, and an increasing number that have adopted deconstruction ordinances, incentives, practices to great benefit for their communities. Portland, Oregon is considered a leader in deconstruction. Their initial ordinance, introduced in 2016, required that all residential properties built before 1916 be deconstructed. And then they extended that 4 years later for any residential property built before 1940. And in a phased approach, they're continuing plans to continue to expand what's required to be deconstructed. In Palo Alto in California, they took a different approach. And so if any structure is going to be completely removed, it needs to be deconstructed. It doesn't matter whether it's residential and commercial, doesn't matter what year it was constructed, doesn't matter how big or small it is, doesn't matter what material it's made of. If it's coming down completely, it needs to be deconstructed. And I should also note that currently, California is the only state in the country that has a statewide building waste diversion requirement. In Pittsburgh, the mayor got the deconstruction ordinance, got a deconstruction executive order on the books. And so any city-owned property that is condemned that would normally be demolished is now deconstructed. And there is a multi-stakeholder deconstruction action council working to see how that can be expanded. And these are just three of a number of examples across the country. So to talk a little about the work that we do at Crowd, Crowd started during COVID about 2.5 years ago in the central New York Finger Lakes area. And over the past couple of years has expanded really almost statewide. So we have participants now from Rochester, from the Albany, Schenectady, Troy area, from the Hudson Valley, from downstate in the New York metro area. And so collectively, there are really 4 areas that we're working in. We have spent a lot of time and continue to on policy research and development, both at local level and state level. So we have entered into partnerships with others who are working in this area. We are all collectively trying to collect policy and incentive that is happening elsewhere around the US. We've created policy guides. So there are easy local municipal overview policy guides. We're about to publish on our website a much more detailed policy guide that has language for local municipalities who might want to actually adopt an ordinance. We do public comments. We did comments for the CLCPA. We have just submitted comments to the EPA as part of the Inflation Reduction Act and their work on building materials, circular economies. We're working on public comments for DEC's solid waste management draft. So that's a big part of what we do. And then a lot of outreach. So outreach at all levels to our elected officials. We engage in conversations with the New York State agencies, DEC, Empire State Development, NYSERDA, and a lot of outreach to professional organizations particularly in the area of recycling, of waste management, land bank associations, so really anyone who's touching our built environment. Early this year, we formed an actual state policy committee at Crowd. And so we're working with some of our elected officials to develop state policy in terms of legislation timeline, policy priorities. We are working to determine legal authority over materials management in New York State, which to us is a little bit murky. Creating a materials hierarchy that takes into account a lot of different characteristics about different building materials in order to prioritize action around them. We are introducing deconstruction pledges to entities like universities, counties, and also looking at how we can actually put into action some sites where we could take materials, as I mentioned, that we're lacking in right now, to store, sort, process, and then reintroduce them back into the marketplace. As it turns out, New York State has a whole lot of vacant public schools built between 1932 and 1972 with characteristics that make them pretty ideal as building circularity centers. So that's something that we're working on as well. We do a lot of education and community engagement. These images are from a public exhibition that was held in Ithaca about a year ago for 3 months. All sorts of interactive information, a lot of visuals, a lot of actual materials. And we have all this information and all these materials. So if any of you would like to do an exhibition, we'd be happy to send it over to you to do an exhibition for others to see. We held a fantastic deconstruction summit in Troy at the end of last year. This is a picture of that on the left, with about 70 people from all over the state, all different professions that have some interest in our built environment. And throughout the day in small groups, workshopped policies and incentives around 25 or so different elements of deconstruction in the built environment. So things like asbestos abatement and certification for reuse of building materials and everything in between. And so that was a fantastic day. There is so much material that came out of that we are using as we move forward and hope to do more of these. Certainly attending a lot of conferences, seminars, speaking, getting the word out, raising awareness, and then being involved with deconstruction projects. There's not a lot of them that are happening right now in New York State, but those that are, we are trying to be there, to use those as case studies for us to gather data, proof of concept, and then holding a lot of focus groups with a lot of different stakeholders who are involved in this kind of work or could be. There's also green workforce creation and development jobs training. So unions, community colleges, high schools, really trying to see how we can extend this workforce training, particularly to underemployed or hard to employ populations. And then certainly through our university partners and the students who work with them and with others like myself at the Christopherson Center, doing a lot of research, data gathering, analysis, data visualization. The data around this stream of materials is really lacking. It doesn't exist, it's vague, it's not entirely helpful. Nonetheless, we are powering through and doing what we can with what we have, as well as, again, as I mentioned, trying to produce new data around actual deconstruction sites and so on. So this is such an important component of what we're doing because it's really informing all the other pieces. We have a website, crowd.org, crowd with a 0 for zero waste development. You can download guides. You can get contact information for our partners. We have a virtual monthly speaker series, which you can sign up for. There's conference schedules, all sorts of information and news articles and so on. And we're going to be adding a lot more to it this summer. So please check in, check back, and see if there's something on there that is what you need. And then I should also mention that we are a growing and committed group of organizations and individuals. And there is a crowd meeting of some kind every Monday at 9 o'clock. And so if any of this is speaking to you in terms of what you are currently working on, or just interested as an individual who'd like to learn more about this whole idea of moving from a linear to a circular construction economy, then please join us. We would love to have you. And you can just attend the meetings and listen. You can become more deeply involved. You can take what you're learning back to your community, come back to us for support in what you would like to move forward, but we would love to have you join. So my contact details are at the bottom. There's my email. You can also get to us through the christophersoncenter.org website, the crowd.org website. And so please reach out if you'd like more information or you'd like to join our regular meetings. And I will just leave you with this awful image that is the result of a demolition that occurred in Ithaca about 1.5 years ago. And as you look on it, you may view this material that ended up in a landfill as waste. But for those of us working to create a circular construction economy, we think it's not waste, it's just wasted. So thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any of your questions at the end. And I'm really pleased to hand it over to Diane Cohen, one of Crowd's stalwart colleagues and who has provided so much inspiration to the rest of us working in Crowd.
Wow, great. Thank you, Gretchen. I've learned so much from you, and I love this partnership and really excited for this opportunity. I'm a product of the Capital District. I was born in Ellesmere, New York. My parents are still there. I get there all the time, but I've been in Ithaca since 1983. So am I presenting? Is it working?
Yep, you're good.
Great. Okay. Am I off and running, Tara?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right, great. Well, really happy to be here. And again, thanks Gretchen and thanks Tara and the Capital District Regional Planning Commission for having me. It's really exciting to be able to talk about this. Really what I'm going to do is go pretty quickly. These slides will be shared and available. Hopefully the links will work. My email's in there. I really want to be accessible to people who are interested in seeing what next steps are. So this is really a very quick snapshot of all the things that we've been doing here in Tompkins County. What we wrote in one of our very first grant applications was leveraging the intellectual capital of Ithaca, New York with Cornell University and Ithaca College up on the hills. And we've really indeed done just that. The student response, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, has been tremendous. And they've done a lot of research that has helped us kind of move this whole project along. So Finger Lakes Reuse is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I have opinions about different business structures. This is one we chose, and I believe for what we've done, it was the correct one. Our mission statement from the beginning was based on the triple bottom line concept of business, people, planet, profit. So our mission is to enhance community, economy, and environment through reuse. We wanted to demonstrate through our mission that we were going to be taking an entrepreneurial approach to this challenge, and the original funding came from Tompkins County. Because we realized our mission statement was kind of broad and amorphous, we wanted to be specific in our original goals, that we wanted to reduce waste, relieve poverty, and teach skills through engaging reuse activities. And some years later, our board had a retreat where we came up with what our vision that we're working for, which is a just, resilient, and waste-free world that values both people and resources. I was really excited to see this National Geographic come out. This was the cover that folded out. It's dated March 2020. It turns out it was like the beginning of a whole new trash era with COVID and all the plastics and all the to-go containers. And I mean, it's just still really crazy, but there's a rising consciousness, and really happy to see things like this concept of the circular economy catching on, and we need to move away from the linear economy, and it's very entrenched, and it's an enormous challenge, and it's daunting. But there are some low-hanging fruit solutions that I think we can work on together. Another great supportive resource is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Reuse relates to almost all of them in some way. And so this is something that we've really, we've adopted as an organization as things that we're really overtly working toward, is the health and well-being of people on this planet. We actually got a grant from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to do 5 murals to raise awareness. It was an environmental justice grant where we had an open process for artists, with the idea that we're also, they're helping us give away materials. So people are coming into our reuse centers and kind of getting an education that it's not just about getting something that's affordable, it's actually having much more profound global impact. So those murals that are reflective of the Sustainable Development Goals are all around the top 4 feet of the inside of our Ithaca Reuse Center. And hopefully they're inspiring the artist who was from, I think, near Auburn. It was really brilliant. What we've done in the last 10 years, and actually I think longer, is we've averaged more than 20% business growth in our income through merchandise sales. And we now have more than 80 employees who are paid a living wage with health benefits. We have 10 paid apprentices, more than 10 youth workers, I think, right now, and this is their first job. Last year, we managed more than 45,000 drop-off donations, vehicles. That doesn't include how many we went out and picked up, which is a much smaller fraction of that. And we occasionally suspend our pickups because we've been so continuously saturated and overwhelmed with the community response. Last year, we returned 750,000 items to use. We've won awards from the EPA, the DEC, our Chamber of Commerce. One of the ones I'm most proud of is from our Alcohol and Drug Council, who gave us their first recovery-friendly Employer of the Year a couple of years ago. And we've been popular with the public too. We've gotten the best thrift store, I think 5 years in a row. And I was really excited when we got best department store, and it showed that the runners up were Target and Kohl's. So that was a new level of success. So what are we handling? I did get into this to do building materials. So Gretchen's got my heart and attention with what they're focused on. I was for a long time a lone voice for deconstruction, and I'm just thrilled at what's happening now with the awareness and the excitement around getting deconstruction more as a normal activity. But housewares are our largest sellers. It is an astounding amount of stuff. Clothing and shoes probably would be our largest seller if we did it at both locations. We're only selling them at one. Furniture is constant. We also do books, movies, DVDs, albums, and we refurbish computers. So here's just a few shots. I'm going to go quickly, just recent shots in our 2 reuse centers. We're a licensed Microsoft refurbisher. And, you know, how do we get started? Well, it really started with our municipality. Tompkins County had to close its landfill, and they decided to add a reuse center to it's supposed to be, say, 10-year plan. And in 2001, they gave a grant to Historic Ithaca, who was had a volunteer-run architectural salvage program. And I got that job. So I started in January 2001 managing that salvage program. And in 2000, I was reporting to them regularly, and I was saying, I'm seeing more than building materials. I'm seeing far more than architecturally significant building materials. And I'm just, the houses that are that we're salvaging out of still have stuff in the cabinets and perfectly good furniture, and it's not stuff we handle. So we started planning in 2005 for a reuse center, and we did a bunch of surveys, and that's linked in here. And if that doesn't work, it's on our website, and I'm also happy to share that early work. We surveyed many stakeholders, and our real takeaways were that convenience and affordability were really key drivers, and that we needed a 45,000 square foot warehouse, which we still don't have. We started in 7,000 square feet. But in 2007, we incorporated as a nonprofit. And in November 2008 is when we finally found a landlord who would work with us. And we opened in 7,000 square feet. We've expanded twice there, and I'll give a little more detail about that in a second. And then in 2015, 7 years later, we purchased a 17,000 square foot property. It was originally a Grand Union, and then it was a school for 20 years, and then it had been empty for several years. We started deconstruction services right from the beginning, but we needed a place for this stuff to flow to first. So we didn't really formally announce it until the year after we opened our reuse center. And then we sort of by chance got into computers and electronics because another volunteer run effort had lost its free access to a free facility. And so they put everything in storage and ultimately gave us everything, including their volunteers. And that's when we expanded for the first time into the storefront next door. But meanwhile, some other community-driven things were happening. There was a New York Times article showing how repair cafes had gotten started up and in Amsterdam. And so then one started up in New York City, and then one started in Washington State. And by the time the 7th Ithacan had forwarded me that New York Times article, I said, well, I think the community is interested in this. So we did a survey. We said, who's interested? We had close to 20 people show up. The survey had many responses. Do you know how to repair things? Are you interested in getting something repaired? I was very surprised to see that even more people said they wanted to help repair than people who had projects. So there's a real interest in getting this going. And it's been volunteer run ever since, every Saturday afternoon, except for a break because of COVID. Volunteers, you can bring your project for free and volunteers will help you fix it. Our job training program, we started researching it right after we opened the electronics, what we call the e-center. It was such a tidal wave of material, and we had one employee and a couple of volunteers. So we started a mutually beneficial job training program that's really demonstrated how engaging the action of reuse is. I can go more into that, but I'm not going to. I want to just show you how we expanded. So we're in what's kind of a strip mall, and there's like an interior hallway, but this is the footprint of the whole mall. Number 14 on the right is a Kinney Drugs. That's the main anchor. But we started in space number 21, and then we expanded into space number 20. So 21 was 7,000 square feet. 20 is another 6,000. So that was 13,000 square feet. So number 2 is, you can see in the upper right picture, and we operated for about from 2010 till 2016 for about 6 years with the 2 stores not joined together inside. So people had to go outside to go to the one cashier. Sometimes it was, you know, very nonprofit-y. And then during COVID in April 2020, our risk-taking board allowed us to sign a lease for another 17,000 square feet. So in April of 2020, we took over what had been a hardware store that left everything on its shelves. And that's what enabled us to kind of get in there. And the third expansion was in 2015 when we purchased the Ithaca Reuse Center downtown. Those two those two locations are about 6 miles apart. We also give a lot of materials away, and we partner with 26 actively local human service agencies. It's a trust-based system. We train their staff, and their executive directors are aware of this agreement. The staff can fill out a very simple form because we have empathy for the harried nonprofit worker. Very simple form. We have a client, there's a need or in crisis. This is how many people in their family, this is what they need. They need a laptop, they need this. We do our best to satisfy those. Last year we were averaging 40 referrals a month. In 2023, so far it's 75. We've been running this since I think 2019 formally. We had done it informally since 2017. We've given away over $370,000 in our price gift card value. Our prices are 50 to 90% below what you could get these materials for at Walmart or Target. So it's probably about $1 million in assistance that we've been and relief that we've been able to provide. Really proud of that. And really at some point, I think sometime toward the end of the first year, when I had been very much about, my mindset was, we need to keep stuff out of the landfill. And I remember almost stopping in my tracks as I was walking through our store one day, and I said, it's not about the stuff, it's about the people. It's about the health and well-being of the people around the landfill, where the landfills are toxic, et cetera. So we started turning our attention toward the organization as, trying to make that as healthy as possible, and really more consciously trying to design something that was a people-first organization. These are just a few of the 85, I think, people that I'm working with right now. Plus there's volunteers and our board of directors. This is a pre-COVID picture, probably when we had about 50 employees. And really, in terms of engagement, there is something for everyone through reuse. There's really a way that everyone can participate by shopping, by donating, by volunteering, by sorting, by organizing, by lifting, by moving. You don't have to have special skills, but you can start learning special skills that could prepare you for other industries, tool management, safety. There's a whole world in electronics, technology. So our training programs have been popular, and also popular with workforce development partners. So we partner with anyone who's in workforce development in Tompkins County, we're an active partner with. So just clicking through some of the activities, denailing is a big deal. It's a big part of deconstruction, and there are all sorts of creative ways to have labor-saving, fun events that lots of people with no skills can get involved with. And then getting things ready for market. That's a whole thing that we've been experimenting with quite a bit for the last 15 years. And it's something that I think we could really offer the whole materials management industry. I just also want to show these pictures, as we all know, the children are our hope and our future. Looking at just the engagement, I mean, you can just feel it, but the Fixers Collective, right before COVID, we decided to have a couple of special events that we called Kids Fix, and we invited kids. We had a separate time slot. We said, bring your toy or just come help fix something. And I just love these photos. I love the intergenerational skill sharing. I mean, I think repair is really, really a huge part of all of this, but also creative reuse. So we have also, this was pre-COVID. We haven't done it since COVID, but we have some creative reuse programming. And just a couple more kind of data slides that I'm going to show you about, like what our business performance is, and then where we are kind of in the industry. So these two lines are our revenue, split into the blue line is our earned revenue, our business revenue, our sales and our service fees. So you can see from when we opened in November 2008, and then in 2015, when we opened our second location, and that higher visibility really started to take off. We also were continually getting better at what we're doing. The gold line is grants and donations, and you can see how that's leveraged this growth. And there's the anomaly in 2020 and 2021 when we got some PPP money that's been forgiven. But I wanted to also compare, the last year we did $2.4 million in sales. I just saw this while I was putting this presentation together. This is on the NERC website. Gretchen referred to them, the Northeast Recycling Council. This is a shot of the commodities sales you know, and the with residuals and without residuals, everybody's kind of scratching their head about how they're separating and mixing things. But if you look at the dollar per ton prices that they're getting, $45, you know, $35, the high is $185. We're actually selling stuff through our reuse centers at $2,000 per ton and more. And so what I've been trying to ask our economic development people is, why not set up a system to capture this and get it into our communities and support jobs? The thrift stores that exist are not enough. They're overwhelmed. Their missions are not waste reduction. People ask, Diane, how is Finger Lakes Reuse different from Goodwill? Goodwill does not have a waste reduction mission. They're helping with waste reduction, but they're not trying to get to the bottom of the pile. I'm not going to play this. Well, I'm going to play it for a second because it's working. But this is one of my heroes.
There's an awful lot of damage out there. There are no jobs, more homeless families. Affordable housing is actually not possible. One of the big questions was, how do we change the game so that the human services and the economic stability of the community can come back? We were going to have to find a way to create the economic tool, a tool for social justice, a tool for opportunity, a tool for both physical and community health. If you don't find capital and resources, you can't fix problems. We said, well, seeing this in a Nepal organization.
All right, that's a 6-minute video. I highly recommend you watch it. He shows kind of the industrial handling. They do mattresses, they do some cool things. They're in Eugene, Oregon, but they are kind of superstars of reuse. They have 14 thrift stores in and around the city of Eugene, and there's 9 Goodwills in that market. So that's about 400,000 people in the entire county, which is a large rural county. So they're demonstrating that there's just far more market, and what they're doing with it is really exciting. This is one of my coworkers, Scarlett, who's similar to Finger Lakes Reuse, which has really bootstrapped and you know, had a really entrepreneurial approach to trying to create space in this world. Scarlett is really a self-made person. She has she's managing our flagship store, the Ithaca Reuse Center. She was born in a prison. She has announced that in at the Reuse Summit that we had last year. I was really proud of her. She's just a fabulous high energy person, and this has just been a really great space for her, and she's one of many, many stories. I think we have a real opportunity to tell this story a little bit better. The New York State Solid Waste Management Plan is super exciting. It has all sorts of space for reuse in it, but they haven't put any fine points in there. So, you know, helping give a little bit more clear outline to the plan that they have is something that I'm really hoping to do. Would love to talk to anybody about that. Would love to share our notes. Like Gretchen said, we'll be sharing with Crowd as well. And they just extended the deadline to June 14th. We also just had 2 Cornell students publish an economic impact analysis of Finger Lakes Reuse in Tompkins County. And there's some data in there, which I think is really exciting. The public-private partnership, you know, the returns on investment, what are they? Here's a few here. Sorry, I'm just skipping through because I want to get to the Q&A. I couldn't thank Crowd and Gretchen enough for really elevating and making a noise about the work that we've been doing in Tompkins County. And I'm so excited about the collaborative spirit that I don't know if it's because of COVID and Zoom and the connectivity that we have, or the sense of urgency that's rising. There's certainly a rising consciousness around materials management and the impacts that it has, plastics in the oceans, global warming. There's all sorts of issues, but really finding that reuse is at the epicenter of quite a bit of that, and we can really make a change. I think it's low-hanging fruit. I think setting up stores and reuse centers for this material to flow through helps the economy, helps the environment, helps create jobs, helps provide opportunities for people. Really want to talk more to anyone who wants to talk. And we wouldn't have been able to do this without many, many partners. Every single foundation in our area has been a supporter of Finger Lakes Reuse, and not just a one-off. Many of them have been year after year after year. We're really grateful for the support so that we can kind of get the word about what we're doing out more broadly. So really happy for this opportunity today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you. Those are both inspiring and just amazing presentations about the work you're doing. So thanks so much for that. And Gretchen, particularly that piece of wood that you showed was just like, I don't know why that never crossed my mind. I mean, I've got a house about 1920 and it's, just thinking about kind of the high quality of the wood that it has and what I could probably purchase now is just something, something to take away from that for sure. So if folks have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I don't see any at the moment. Somebody did ask before about the slides being available. So if you didn't see the response to that question, we are going to have these slides with all of that wonderful data and everything else on our website along with the recording. So please feel free to share. Yes, and somebody asked if they could rewatch the recording. We'll have that with the slides. So that'll be on our website at CDRPC. So somebody is asking, what has been the response from the construction industry, home builder in particular?
The outreach that we've done to property developers and contractors, and granted, this has been within the central New York area for the most part, many of them engage informally in reuse already. There was just a story I saw today about, and this isn't exactly building materials, but it is infrastructure. A lot of bleachers from a Cornell University sports stadium are being now taken out because they're upgrading the facility and being used in Lansing, which is one town over from Ithaca. And so there's more awareness around this. Diane can speak to this as well. And some of the deconstruction projects that have gone on in Ithaca, there have been contractors who have brought their staff to participate in deconstruction so that they can learn as much about taking a building down as building a building up. So, but it's a slow road, but there is an openness, I would say, around from the conversations we've had, but these are largely smaller developers and contractors. We have yet to really approach it from, a larger corporate level. But Diane, you should absolutely add to that.
Yeah, I think from a technical perspective, the contractors have been interested, and some of them actually do informal deconstruction on their own. There's actually demolition contractors who will salvage things before they completely crush the building. I think the biggest challenge is there's not a market for the stuff to go to. So unless you see an immediate use or have capacity to store something, it makes it pretty difficult. The actual activity of taking a building apart, there are lots and lots of techniques to do it. You can panelize things so you can do it quickly. You can do it by hand, so you can do it super safely without a lot of equipment, heavy equipment, and all of those are existing models out there, and any contractor would be able to do it. But if they don't have a place or some sort of incentive to do it, to bring the material to, or to do that, it's not happening because the culture is there's no time planned in the design for deconstruction. Deconstruction of a building may take 1 to 4 weeks. And demolition, everybody thinks it takes a day, but it takes longer to get everything set up. So there's been ordinances where to level the playing field, if you're demolishing, you have to wait 30 or 60 days, but if you're doing deconstruction, you can start right away. So it kind of levels the playing field on the timing aspect. There's still an expense aspect, but there's waste savings, there's ways to market that material. So I think there's an educational piece around the contractors, but I firmly believe that it would happen more if there's a place for the materials to flow through. So that market development piece is really important. And I personally believe that really that's all about just having a brick and mortar space and an online marketplace established so that you can pre-sale stuff. You've done the walkthrough, you've done the analysis. Before you even start taking it apart, you can inventory it and sell it. So there's work happening on making that marketplace available. And then having, the stuff that doesn't sell before the day you have to actually take it all apart, but there's still stuff of value. You need that brick and mortar overflow for the stuff to go.
Great, thank you so much. Someone else was asking, how can we apply reuse in consulting? For example, how can we leverage this in presenting and proposing ideas to clients?
What kind of consulting? I saw the question, but I wasn't sure.
Let's see, Elena, I don't know if you can comment. I'm gonna see if I can.
One of the things I would say is in the consulting world is presenting what I think are really compelling statistics to your client. So one of the challenges around this stream of building materials going to the landfill and the incinerator is that it's largely invisible and people aren't aware of it. So when I said we produce in this country 600 million tons, it's twice the amount of the garbage we throw away every day. Most people don't know that. And I find that to be a shocking statistic. And so I do think that even just at the most basic level, just raising general awareness around this is really one of the first and most important steps when you have clients, regardless of what it is you might be consulting on.
It looks like Elena is focused on land development. She responded, so.
Yeah, so it sounds like the question would be about if it's land development, if there's a building on the property, so trying to encourage deconstruction. There's an industry that needs to be built. There's contractors that need to be able to do it, but I'm coming from the camp that I think that there needs to be a place for the materials to be first, so that when you start, I've seen colleagues start doing deconstruction and then their garage fills up and then their side yard fills up and then they have to rent a barn to fill the stuff up there. So I kind of believe that having some sort of retail front for this material to start to flow is how to and for us, it's been a fire hose. We have not been able to control it. There's so much public interest in it. It's extraordinarily stressful for our staff because the students are moving out right now, and then the homeowners are cleaning out, and someone just stopped me today at lunch and said that he got this part for an old sconce on his 1940s house that he couldn't find anywhere, but we saved him by having this particular bracket that he couldn't find anywhere else. So there's a lot of interest and demand in the parts and pieces, having access to affordable materials, especially with supply chain disruption and all sorts of other things. To me, it just seems like madness to even allow this stuff to go into the dark, into the dumpsters, into landfills that are, way overstretched. And incinerators are going to be the next solution, and that is a much more toxic and intensively hazardous way to manage materials. It's not a solution.
Thank you. So somebody's saying thank you for the information. People are excited about your presentations. Someone else is asking, I regularly donate household items to local charities, but they're not a reuse organization per se. They're focused on women's health issues. Where do these items and materials end up?
There's a whole bunch. This is equally opaque, just as opaque as the path to the landfill. And once the dumpster lid closes, that item is pretty much lost. The markets for charity fundraisers, a lot of times those drop boxes, they're just collecting them and baling material, and then they have wholesalers who go through. And I think some amount of that stuff gets shipped overseas and it ends up as waste in other countries where it's, more affordable. In theory, it sounds like it's a nice thing to send the stuff that we can't use to a country in need. But in reality, we're creating huge landfill problems overseas as well. Wasn't there an article about a desert in South America that's just filling up with clothes? That, so I'm not saying that that's what this charity does. I would definitely ask them if that's something that you support and see what kind of answer. But even we have had to work with some downstream markets because we've gotten so many clothes donated. And we don't yet have a baler, but we think that we're going to get one this year, thanks to a grant from New York State. But because we can't bale things, we don't have a lot of choices for buyers for our overflow materials. And we ask our buyer, where is this going? And they say, oh, well, we sell it to a buyer in Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia is a major port. So they know that we want to keep things in the US. And so they're saying, oh, no, we sell it to a US buyer. But what that buyer does is there's no chain transparency.
So someone's asking, the social and environmental benefits are tremendous. Have the cost benefit analysis pro formas, et cetera, shown financial benefit? What about increasing cost of tipping fees to landfills? Was any of this done in the Cornell students kind of analysis of your work at reuse, or?
There's a lot of talk about increasing the cost of waste to like kind of disincentivize people disposing. And I think the costs are going to go up, and they're going up in Tompkins County just because it's more expensive to handle waste every year. They did not do a, they did a small section on the tonnage that we were able to keep in use and how much cost savings that was to the community by avoided tipping fees. And I think that there's actually more to dig into there, because then we're selling the stuff at discounted rates. So there's these kind of multiplying economic impacts that I think the students did a really great job laying out, but I think there's more analysis that could be built on their work. I was really grateful for what they did. They actually, the first thing Cornell students have to do is a literature analysis. And they said, Diane, we looked all over the globe and there's one in Australia that's pretty good. And there's, one in Minnesota, and that's kind of it. So it's, the economic impact of this industry has not been focused on as of yet, but I think it's starting to get some focus.
Great. So I think this one's for Gretchen, because she mentioned the Palo Alto thing. Have you heard from anyone involved in this, in the Palo Alto project, and how their regulations and programs are working out?
Yeah, one of the great things about working, doing work in the circular construction economy is that everyone else who's doing it is incredibly generous with their time and their suggestions and their resources. And so the woman in Palo Alto who heads up this program is really kind of a one-woman show. And I think in Palo Alto, we haven't checked in with them recently, but I think one of the challenges, which they were aware of when they went this route, is that because every site, every building that's coming down is different. They're not necessarily all residential, built within a certain period of time with similar materials. She spends the main part of her job is engaging and educating and interfacing with the property owners and the contractors that are taking the buildings down. And so every single one is different. But that was their choice in terms of this ordinance. And so that's, I don't have the most recent updated information about, that program, but that was one of the challenges for her as the lone person dealing with the deconstruction ordinance in Palo Alto.
So is there any cost sharing to incent developers to cover the cost of the construction? Or deconstruction, I'm sorry.
So in municipalities that have introduced ordinances, what many of them have in common is that prior to an ordinance introduction, they have incentivized the market by offering, a financial incentive. And it doesn't need to be big. And so I think in the case of Portland, before they introduced the ordinance, they spent a year or 18 months incentivizing contractors, property owners on deconstruction rather than demolition. And they offered between $3,000 and $5,000 to a residential property owner. And that was enough to fill the gap in the cost, because then there are other ways that you can, depending on the market, there are other ways that you can get your money back as well. So you can donate the materials for a tax write-off, if you know, depending on your income bracket. You can sell them on the open market. So there's ways after you've incurred costs to receive, you know, financial benefit back. And so this idea of some state funding that comes down to a municipality to incentivize prior to actually introducing an ordinance has been a real valuable pathway for municipalities, you know, who have chosen to really put in place policies.
Great. And I'll take one last question here, which I think is our last one, but I wanted to mention before I did that Nate from the town of Bethlehem says hi to you, Diane. And I know there were some other folks that I saw on the attendee list from Bethlehem too. So well represented in your hometown. But the last question is, has the technology recycling reuse program been the catalyst to job creation? Do you have any critical partnerships that made this program successful?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our investors is actually it's money through HUD, through our Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency. They've been longtime supporters of our job training program. What we say that's been really successful when we apply for grants to support our apprentices is that we can pay for 50% of their pay, because they're helping us put stuff on the shelves. They're helping go through checklists, and we have quality control, so we double check things, but that's what the mutual benefit part is. But also Tompkins County Workforce New York, some of the agencies that work with underserved communities, people of color, all of them become referral partners for us. And even Historic Ithaca Significant Elements, which is the place I used to work, it's right around the corner from us. They still have an architectural salvage program. They have a workforce training program as well, where they do job readiness. And so sometimes someone will go through that program and then come to us. Every once in a while, it'll go the other direction, depending on the person's interests. But we're providing this layer of for people who are have barriers to employment, have an unstable life where they're trying and failing. We're providing a space for them to try to earn some income, give them feedback around, you know, you got to call. And having both the technology and we have retail and customer service, and we've done the construction/deconstruction one, but that was very difficult for us to manage because we don't have a steady stream of deconstruction projects, mostly because of our own capacity and all the stuff that's coming at us. We kind of lost our appetite to go out and take a building apart and bring it when we don't have a lot of space for that to be absorbed with all the other stuff that's coming at us. But because we have this variety of experiences for a potential trainee to take, that engagement piece is something that I think where everybody's scratching their heads about where's the workforce right now. There's a lot of people who are disconnected from society who they don't have a sense of their own confidence or worth. They can come in and start building that in these variety of reuse programs and ultimately get picked up by the trade union. So we've also partnered with Local Labor 785 here in Tompkins County. So there's a whole bunch of outlets and partners that we talk to, potential employers, and we're trying to build a bridge into that. There's also career pathways, which is something that came out of cooperative extension that we've been very closely working with. So many partners in the job development thing.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. Thank you both so much again. So everyone that's on, we will have all this shared. So you'll be able to look back and look at the questions answered. And thanks again so much to both of you. And
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you in Bethlehem.